The aroma of warm corn, subtly charred at the edges, usually brought a comforting peace to Xochitl. It was the smell of home, of sustenance, of the life she and Osvaldo were building, even if it was a modest one. But today, as the scent of the tortillas she was carefully pressing filled their small kitchen, it tasted of ash in her mouth. Her hands, usually so steady, trembled as she flipped another golden disc onto the comal, the slight tremor in her fingers mirroring the unease churning in her stomach. She was heavily pregnant, her belly a prominent curve beneath her simple dress, and the slightest upset now felt magnified 100-fold. The morning light, usually a soft caress through their small window, seemed harsh, illuminating every speck of dust, every imperfection in their humble dwelling. A fly buzzed lazily near the window, its mundane sound a stark contrast to the frantic beat of Xochitl's heart. Osvaldo had been different for weeks, a coldness in his eyes that had slowly replaced the warmth she remembered. He'd been coming home late, his explanations vague, his laughter less frequent. Xochitl had tried to ignore it, to blame it on the stresses of the harvest, on the weight of their unborn child. She had whispered prayers into the night, hoping for a return to the man she married, the man who had once looked at her with such tenderness. But then, this morning, she had found it. Tucked beneath a loose floorboard, where Osvaldo kept their few important papers, was a document she didn't recognize. Her heart had begun to pound a frantic rhythm against her ribs as she unfolded the crisp paper, her eyes scanning the official-looking script. The legal jargon was dense, but one word, repeated several times, stood out like a brand: Venta Sale. And then she saw it, her breath catching in her throat like a burr. The signature, his signature. And below it, a description of their land, the small parcel of earth that had belonged to her family for generations, sold. Sold. The word echoed in her mind, a hollow, terrifying sound. The tortillas on the comal began to burn, the acrid smell now overpowering the sweet corn. Xochitl didn't notice. Her vision blurred, tears stinging her eyes though she fought them back. This couldn't be. Not their land. Not the land her grandmother had tilled, the land where her mother had taught her to plant beans and squash. This was their future, their child's inheritance. This was the very soil that held the memories of generations, the dust of her ancestors. It was more than just property, it was their legacy, their identity. Just then, the door creaked open, and Osvaldo stepped inside, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He looked different, too. His hair was slicked back, a new shirt, bright and clean, stretched across his chest. He smelled of cheap cologne, a scent she didn't recognize, a scent that made her stomach clench. It was an unfamiliar, almost aggressive fragrance, completely unlike the earthy, honest scent of him she knew. "Osvaldo," she said, her voice a thin whisper, barely audible above the sizzling tortillas. Her hands, still clutching the crumpled document, were shaking so violently she could barely hold it steady. The paper rustled like dry leaves in her trembling grip. He glanced at her, a flicker of something in his eyes she couldn't quite decipher: annoyance, guilt, before it was replaced by a practiced indifference. For a fleeting second, his gaze seemed to soften, a shadow of the man she knew, before hardening into a mask of cold resolve. "What is it, Mujer?" he asked, his tone flat, devoid of the usual affection. He didn't even look at her, instead turning to place his duffel bag carefully by the door, as if preparing for a journey. She held out the paper, her arm trembling. "What is this? What have you done?" Her voice cracked on the last word, betraying the fragile composure she tried to maintain. The question hung in the air, heavy with accusation and desperate confusion. Osvaldo's gaze fell to the document, and a faint smirk touched his lips. He walked over to the table slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a chair. He sat down, crossing his arms over his chest, his eyes fixed on her. "Ah, so you found it," he said, his voice casual as if discussing the weather. He leaned back, an air of almost theatrical nonchalance about him. "It's exactly what it looks like, Xochitl. I sold the land." The world spun around her. Sold the land. She repeated, the words feeling foreign and impossible on her tongue. Our land, why, how could you? Her voice rose, a desperate plea for understanding, for a reason that could possibly justify such an act. He shrugged, a dismissive gesture that cut deeper than any insult. Because I need money, more money than this dusty patch of earth could ever give us. He paused, his eyes narrowing, a cruel glint entering them. More money than you could ever give me. His words were delivered with a chilling precision, each one a deliberate stab. A fresh wave of nausea washed over her, not from her pregnancy, but from the raw, unadulterated cruelty in his voice. But our savings. We had enough for the baby, for the doctor, she stammered, remembering the small pouch of coins they had carefully accumulated over years, tucked away for emergencies, for their child's arrival. Every peso had been earned with sweat and sacrifice, a promise for their future. Osvaldo laughed then, a short, harsh sound that grated on her ears. Oh, that's gone too, spent. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a low, mocking whisper, his eyes holding hers in a cold, unwavering stare. Did you really think I was going to stay here with you, raising some brat in this hovel? Poor favor, Xochitl. I have bigger plans. He paused, a flicker of something that might have been a fleeting regret crossing his face, a momentary hesitation before his resolve hardened and the cruel words flowed again unchecked. Her mind reeled. Bigger plans. What are you talking about? The question was a desperate attempt to grasp at any shred of logic, any explanation for this sudden, brutal transformation. He pushed himself up from the table, walking towards the door. I'm leaving. For Mexico City. There's a woman there. She understands ambition. She has money, real money, not just a few pesos saved from selling chickens. He paused at the doorway, turning back to face her, his eyes cold and devoid of any emotion she recognized. You're a good woman, Xochitl, pero no heirs para mí. You're too simple, too tied to this dirt. I need more. He adjusted the strap of his duffel bag, a gesture of finality. The smell of burning tortillas was thick in the air, a choking cloud that mirrored the suffocation in her chest. The betrayal was a physical blow, worse than any fist. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw a stranger. The man she had loved, the father of her child, was gone, replaced by this cruel, calculating shell. The air crackled with the unspoken words, the shattered promises, the ghost of a love that had once been. You would leave me. Pregnant, with nothing. Her voice was barely a whisper, filled with a disbelief that warred with the stark reality of his words. Her hand instinctively went to her swollen belly, a protective gesture. He gave another dismissive shrug, adjusting the strap of his duffel bag. You'll be fine. You have your family, don't you? They'll take care of you. And the baby. He didn't even look at her belly, his gaze fixed somewhere beyond her, already on his new life. Adios, Xochitl. And then he was gone, the door closing with a soft click that resonated like a thunderclap in the sudden silence. The only sound left was the relentless sizzle of the burning tortillas on the comal, the smell of charred corn, now a bitter, enduring memory of the day her world had crumbled into ash. She stood there frozen, the crumpled land deed still clutched in her trembling hand, the weight of her unborn child a sudden, terrifying burden. The betrayal was complete, absolute, leaving her adrift in a sea of despair, with nothing but the clothes on her back and the faint, acrid scent of a life consumed by fire. The small kitchen, once a sanctuary, now felt like a tomb, echoing with the ghost of his cruel words. The jolt of the truck sent Xochitl sprawling, her meager belongings scattering across the sun-baked earth. Osvaldo, his face a mask of indifference, merely watched as the dust billowed around her. This is where you belong, Osvaldo said, his voice devoid of any warmth with the rest of the forgotten. He did not even offer a hand. The truck's engine roared, spitting gravel as it turned, leaving Xochitl in its wake. The sound faded quickly, swallowed by the vast, oppressive silence of the desert. The air shimmered with heat, distorting the distant horizon, making the world feel even more unreal. Xochitl pushed herself up, her body aching, her heart a raw wound. The pueblo, if one could even call it that, was a collection of crumbling adobe structures, their roofs caved in, their windows like vacant eyes staring out at nothing. The wind, dry and hot, whispered through the skeletal remains of what might once have been homes, carrying with it the scent of dust and decay. It was a place where dreams came to die, a fitting epitaph for her own shattered life. The sun beat down mercilessly, a blazing hammer against the anvil of her despair. Its heat mirrored the inferno raging within her, a searing blend of anger and betrayal. She clutched the rebozo, its familiar weave offering scant comfort against the chill of her abandonment. Her small bag of corn, a pathetic offering against the enormity of her hunger, felt impossibly heavy. These and the clothes. On her back were all that remained of her existence. Osvaldo had chosen this place with cruel precision, a forgotten corner of the world, far from any paved road, far from any sign of life. "What use are you to me now?" Osvaldo had sneered, his words echoing in her mind, "You and your simple ways." He had wanted more, he had said. More money, more ambition, more than Xochitl could ever offer. And so he had cast her aside like refuse. Her mind reeled, trying to grasp the enormity of his cruelty. How could the man she had loved, the father of her unborn child, be capable of such calculated malice? The image of him, casually admitting to selling their ancestral land, to spending their savings, flashed before her eyes. "I need more," Osvaldo had declared, his eyes cold and distant, "more than this life can give." He had dismissed her, dismissed their child, as if they were nothing. She looked around, her eyes scanning the desolate landscape. Not a single tree offered shade, not a single cloud marred the relentless blue of the sky. The ground was cracked and parched, a testament to years of neglect. This was her new reality. This was where Osvaldo had left her to perish, but a flicker of defiance ignited within her. She would not perish, not here, not now. She would not give him the satisfaction. Her jaw tightened, a stubborn resolve setting in. In the distance, barely discernible against the shimmering heat haze, she saw it, a dilapidated rancho. Its walls were crumbling, its roof sagging, but it was there. A structure, however broken, in a sea of nothingness. It was her only hope. The thought of walking towards it, under the relentless sun, with her heavy heart and heavier belly, is daunting. But what choice did she have? She took a deep, shaky breath, the dry air scratching at her throat. Her legs felt like lead, each step a monumental effort. The dust rose with every movement, coating her skin, filling her lungs. It felt as if the very earth was trying to swallow her whole. She stumbled, her knees buckling, and collapsed onto the hot, unforgiving ground, the last of her strength draining away. For a moment she lay there, utterly spent, the sun a blinding white disk above her. Her vision swam, the world blurring at the edges. But then, as her eyes fluttered open, her gaze fell upon the distant rancho once more, a faint outline against the shimmering horizon. It was still there, a fragile beacon in her despair. Her vulnerability was palpable, a raw nerve exposed to the harsh elements. She was alone, utterly and completely alone, in a place that seemed to actively reject life. The silence was deafening, broken only by the mournful sigh of the wind and the rhythmic thump of her own terrified heart. Every shadow seemed to lengthen, to twist into menacing shapes. Every rustle of dry brush sent a jolt of fear through her. She was a tiny, fragile speck in a vast, indifferent world. The desert stretched endlessly around her, a silent, unforgiving witness to her plight. As she trudged forward, the rancho seemed to recede, an illusion of hope perpetually out of reach. Her throat was parched, her lips cracked. The small bag of corn felt like a rock in her hand. She thought of the fresh tortillas she had made that morning, the smell of warm masa filling their humble home. The memory was a cruel mockery of her current reality. She thought of the document, the one that had shattered her world, the one that had revealed Osvaldo's betrayal, the casualness with which he had admitted his treachery, the coldness in his eyes as he spoke of leaving her for a wealthy woman in Mexico City. It was a wound that would never truly heal. The sun beat down relentlessly, a constant reminder of her exposed state. The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a beautiful yet deceptive facade to the harshness of the land. The shadows grew longer, stretching out like skeletal fingers. The air, though still warm, held a hint of the chill that would descend with nightfall. She knew she had to reach the rancho before darkness fully enveloped her. The thought of spending a night in the open, exposed to whatever dangers lurked in the desert, filled her with an icy dread. She pushed herself harder, her muscles screaming in protest. Each step was a battle, a small victory against the overwhelming despair. The rancho, though still distant, slowly began to take on more defined features. She could see the gaping holes in its roof, the missing planks in its walls. It was a ruin, yes, but it was shelter. It was something. Her breath hitched in her chest, a sob threatening to escape, but she held it back. She would not cry, not yet. She would save her tears for when she was safe, if safety was even possible in this desolate place. She focused on the rancho, on the faint outline of its crumbling walls against the darkening sky. It was her beacon, her only hope in this vast, empty expanse. The journey felt endless, each footfall a heavy reminder of her abandonment. But with every step, a tiny spark of resolve ignited within her. She was still alive, she was still moving, and as long as she could do that, there was a chance. There was always a chance. The last sliver of sun dipped below the horizon, plunging the desert into a sudden, profound twilight. The rancho, a skeletal whisper of what it once was, offered little comfort as Xochitl stumbled through its decaying doorway. Darkness, thick and suffocating, swallowed the last vestiges of twilight, leaving her alone with the echoing silence of betrayal. This was her first night, a stark testament to Osvaldo's cruelty. The air, heavy with the scent of dust and decay, pressed in on her, each breath a struggle against the crushing weight of her despair. She clutched her belly, a protective gesture for the life within that now felt so terribly vulnerable. The wind, a mournful banshee, wailed through gaping holes in the walls, its icy fingers seeking out every exposed patch of skin. A sudden drip, then another, splattered onto the packed earth floor. The roof, a sieve of broken tiles and rotting wood, offered no real shelter. Rain, a relentless weeping from the bruised sky, began to seep through, forming dark, spreading puddles. Xochitl huddled in a corner, pulling her threadbare rebozo tighter around her, though it did little to ward off the biting chill. Her teeth chattered, not just from the cold, but from a deep, bone-rattling fear that had taken root in her soul. The darkness felt alive, pressing in on her from all sides. A scuttling sound, sharp and unsettling, broke the oppressive quiet. Rats. She could hear them, a small army of them, scurrying across the floor, their tiny claws scratching against the loose debris. The thought of them, unseen in the inky blackness, sent a shiver of revulsion through her. She was not just alone. She was utterly exposed, surrounded by the creeping decay of this abandoned place, a mirror to her own shattered life. There was no electricity, no flicker of light to push back against the consuming darkness, only the faint, mocking glow of the distant moon peeking through a broken window pane. Osvaldo's words, venomous and dismissive, echoed in her mind. "You are too simple," he had said, his voice devoid of any affection. "Mexico City awaits, and a woman who understands ambition." The memory was a fresh wound, twisting in her gut. She had given him everything, her trust, her love, her future, and he had repaid her with this desolate abandonment. The bitterness was a tangible thing, a metallic taste on her tongue. The cold, hard floor beneath her offered no comfort, only a stark reminder of her new reality. She was so tired, so utterly exhausted, that the thought of simply giving up, of letting the darkness claim her, was a tempting whisper. What was the point? What was left for her? Her ancestral land sold, her savings gone, her husband vanished, her dignity trampled. The world felt like a vast, indifferent void, and she, a tiny, insignificant speck, adrift and forgotten. The hunger pangs, sharp and insistent, reminded her of the meager bag of corn Osvaldo had left, a cruel joke in the face of such betrayal. She gnawed on a few kernels, their dry taste a poor substitute for the sustenance her body craved. Just as the despair threatened to consume her entirely, her hand brushed against something small and hard in the dust. She fumbled for it, her fingers closing around a smooth, cool surface. It was a ceramic doll, small and chipped, half buried beneath years of neglect. Its painted eyes, though faded, seemed to gaze up at her with a silent, unwavering patience. It was a child's toy, forgotten and discarded, yet somehow, in this moment of utter desolation, it offered a strange, unexpected comfort. Xochitl wondered about the child who had once played with it, a fleeting image of innocence in this place of ruin. She imagined a little girl, perhaps with braids and bright eyes, clutching this very doll, dreaming of a future that never came to be. A pang of longing for her own unborn child's innocence, a fierce desire to protect it from the harshness of the world, surged through her. This doll, a symbol of forgotten joy, became a silent promise to herself. She would fight for her child's future, for a life filled with more than just dust and despair. The doll, a small, fragile thing, felt warm in her cold hand. It was a relic of a past life, perhaps, a child who had once played in this very rancho. Its presence, so unexpected, was a tiny flicker in the vast darkness. It was a reminder that even in ruin there could be remnants of life, of joy, of innocence. It was a whisper of resilience, a silent promise that even broken things could endure. The wind still howled, the rats still scurried, and the rain still dripped, but the doll, held tightly in her palm, was a small, fragile anchor in the stormy sea of her despair. She would not give up. Not yet. Not for this little doll, and certainly not for the life stirring within her. The first light of dawn brought not warmth, but a fierce resolve to Xochitl's weary bones. The cold, damp air of the rancho still bit at her, but the crushing weight of despair that had settled upon her the night before had begun to lift, replaced by a steely determination. She would not simply exist here, she would survive. And survival, she knew, began with action. Xochitl pushed herself up from the dusty floor, every muscle aching, and looked around the dilapidated space that was now her refuge. It was a ruin, yes, but it was her ruin. The faint light filtering through the broken roof illuminated the extent of the decay, but also the potential for transformation. Her first act was to begin cleaning, not with any grand plan, but one small section at a time. She started near the entrance, sweeping away layers of dust and debris with a broken branch she found. The air, thick with the scent of decay and disuse, slowly began to clear as she worked. Her movements were slow at first, hesitant, but with each sweep, a rhythm emerged, a quiet defiance against the desolation. The thought of Osvaldo, of his cruel words and his cold abandonment, still gnawed at her, but she pushed it down, focusing on the immediate, tangible task. Each sweep of the branch was a small act of reclamation, a physical manifestation of her will to endure. As she cleared a particularly stubborn pile of refuse near what might have once been a kitchen, her hand brushed against something hard. She knelt, digging through the grime, and pulled out a rectangular object wrapped in a faded cloth. Unfurling it, Xochitl discovered an old, tattered gardening manual. Its pages were brittle, some torn, but the illustrations, though faded, were still discernible. A small, hopeful spark ignited within her. This, she realized, was a guide, a whisper of possibility in the vast silence. It was a tangible link to a past where this land had been cultivated, a blueprint for a future she was determined to build. Encouraged, Xochitl continued her search, now with a purpose. She scoured every corner, every shadow, hoping for more clues, more tools. Her persistence was rewarded when, tucked away in a dark alcove, she found a small, rusted trowel, a pair of dull shears, and a coil of frayed rope. They were far from new, far from perfect, but they were tools, and in this desolate place, tools were treasure. They were instruments of creation, symbols of her burgeoning self-reliance. The rancho's roof was a sieve, a constant reminder of its decay and a primary source of her discomfort. The leaks had made the first night a miserable ordeal, and Xochitl knew it had to be addressed. Armed with the rope and a few pieces of corrugated metal she'd salvaged from a collapsed lean-to outside, she decided to tackle the worst of the holes. This was harder than she had anticipated. The metal was unwieldy, the rope slippery in her hands, and the roof itself was unstable in places. She struggled, her fingers fumbling, the heavy metal threatening to slip from her grasp more than once. The wind, still persistent, seemed to mock her efforts, tugging at the loose metal. "Hijil, this is harder than it looks," Xochitl muttered to herself, a huff of exasperation escaping her lips. Her voice, rough from disuse, sounded strange in the cavernous space. She tried to wedge the metal in place, but it slid away, clattering to the floor. Frustration pricked at her, hot and sharp, but then she remembered the tiny flutter within her, the life she carried. That thought, the image of her unborn child, solidified her resolve. She would not give up. She could not. She tried again, this time approaching the problem differently. Instead of forcing the metal, she propped it with a large stone, then used the rope to secure it more firmly. It wasn't elegant, and it certainly wasn't a permanent fix, but it stopped the immediate drip. A small victory, yes, but a victory nonetheless. The learning process was clumsy, filled with trial and error, but with each failed attempt, she learned a little more, her hands growing more accustomed to the work, her mind sharper, more focused. She was adapting, evolving, becoming someone new, stronger. The gardening manual became her constant companion. She pored over its pages, deciphering the faded instructions on planting and soil preparation. The idea of growing something, anything, in this barren land felt like an impossible dream, yet the manual offered a blueprint, a path forward. She began to clear a small patch of ground outside, near the ranch's crumbling wall, the trowel digging into the hard, unyielding earth. It was slow work, her muscles protesting with every stroke, but she persisted, fueled by a nascent hope. The sun beat down, but she barely noticed, lost in the rhythm of her labor. Xochitl found a few dried seeds in a forgotten clay pot near the manual. They were old, shriveled, and she had no idea what they were, but they were seeds. With trembling hands, she planted them in the patch she had cleared, following the manual's instructions as best she could. She watered them with the last of her meager supply, carefully, reverently. It was a gesture of faith, a whisper of a future she desperately hoped for. The ranch was still a ruin, but within its walls, and in the small patch of earth outside, Xochitl was beginning to plant the seeds of her own resilience. She was learning, adapting, and most importantly, she was not giving up. Each seed was a tiny prayer, a silent declaration of defiance against the desolation. The ranch, once a symbol of her despair, slowly began to show signs of life under Xochitl's persistent touch. But her efforts, though fierce and unwavering, did not go unnoticed in the quiet, watchful valley. From the nearby pueblo, a wise curandera, Doña Remedios, observed. Her eyes, ancient and knowing, saw past the ruin and into the determined spirit of the young woman toiling alone. Doña Remedios never approached Xochitl directly, understanding that some wounds needed space to heal, and some resilience needed to be forged in solitude. Instead, she chose a more subtle path, a path woven with quiet kindness and unspoken support. She would often walk to the edge of the mesa overlooking the rancho, her silhouette framed against the rising sun, watching Xochitl work, a silent guardian. Every few days, Xochitl would find something new at the rickety gate of the rancho. Sometimes, it was a small bundle of freshly picked herbs, fragrant with the scent of the earth and sun. Other times, a simple cloth bag held a few ripe avocados or a handful of plump chilies, sustenance that Xochitl desperately needed but would never have asked for. Once she found a clay pot filled with cool, clean water, its surface reflecting the vast sky. Each gift was left silently, without fanfare or expectation. Xochitl initially was wary. Her recent betrayal had left her with a deep distrust of unexpected gestures, her heart a guarded fortress. She would eye the offerings with suspicion, wondering who had left them and why. Was this some cruel trick? Was someone mocking her plight? The thought lingered, a bitter taste in her mouth. But the gifts continued, always appearing when she was most in need. When her energy flagged, a small, nourishing meal would appear. When she struggled with a persistent cough, a pouch of dried leaves for a soothing tea would be there. There was no note, no message, just the quiet presence of the offering itself. And with each anonymous gift, a tiny crack appeared in the wall of Xochitl's wariness. She started to notice the quality of the herbs, the freshness of the produce. This was not charity given out of pity, but sustenance offered with respect, almost as if the giver understood her struggle without needing to witness it. She would sometimes catch a glimpse of a figure, small and distant, retreating over the ridge, a flash of a rebozo disappearing into the heat haze. One morning, alongside a basket of sweet corn, Xochitl found a small, smooth stone, intricately carved with a symbol she didn't recognize, yet it radiated a sense of peace. Beneath it, tucked carefully, was a single, dried marigold petal. This was different from the food. This felt like a message, a silent blessing. She held the stone in her palm, feeling its coolness, and a strange sense of comfort washed over her. It was then that a whisper of a name often spoken with reverence in the nearby pueblo, came to her mind. Doña Remedios. The curandera, known for her wisdom and her quiet ways, was the only one who fit the pattern of these silent acts of grace. The realization brought a different kind of warmth to Xochitl's heart. It wasn't pity, but a recognition of her struggle, a silent acknowledgement of her strength. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, Xochitl began to trust these gestures. She started to leave a small, symbolic offering of her own in return, a perfectly smooth pebble she found, a wild flower she picked, a neatly folded piece of cloth. She never saw Doña Remedios, nor did Doña Remedios ever reveal herself. Their communication was a silent dance of giving and receiving, a bond forged in the shadows of the old rancho. The curandera's wisdom was not spoken in words, but manifested in the timely appearance of exactly what Xochitl needed, anticipating her struggles before they fully bloomed. It was a subtle, profound support, allowing Xochitl to rebuild her life on her own terms, yet never truly alone. This quiet, steadfast presence became a steadying force, a beacon of hope in the vast solitude of her new life. Months bled into one another, each day a testament to Xochitl's unwavering resolve. The small patch of earth, once a chaotic tangle of weeds and dry soil, had been transformed by her relentless hands. She had followed the faded diagrams in the old gardening manual, the one she had discovered tucked away in a dusty corner of the rancho. The manual, with its intricate drawings of root systems and planting depths, had become her constant companion, its pages dog-eared and stained with the earth she worked so diligently. Xochitl had cleared the land, stone by painstaking stone, root by stubborn root, until the soil lay exposed, a canvas awaiting its first strokes of green. The sun, a relentless artist, painted the landscape in shades of ochre and gold, but Xochitl, focused on her task, barely noticed the passage of time, only the progress of her labor. The sun beat down with an unyielding intensity, baking the ground and testing Xochitl's spirit. There were days when the despair threatened to overwhelm her, days when the sheer magnitude of her task felt insurmountable. But then she would remember the silent gifts left at her gate, the fresh water, the dried herbs, the occasional basket of fruit. Doña Remedios, her unseen benefactor, continued her quiet vigil, a constant, unspoken reassurance that Xochitl was not truly alone. The carved stone, a small, smooth river rock with a single marigold petal pressed into its surface, remained on Xochitl's makeshift altar, a tangible symbol of the unique bond she shared with Doña Remedios. It was a silent dance of giving and receiving, a lifeline woven from threads of compassion and respect. Xochitl had planted the old corn seeds, each one a tiny promise buried in the earth. She had watered them religiously, carrying buckets from the shallow well, her muscles aching with the effort. Every morning she would rise before the sun, her heart a fragile vessel of hope and anxiety, and walk to the patch, searching for any sign of life. Every evening, as the sky bled into hues of orange and purple, she would return, her gaze sweeping over the dry earth, a silent prayer on her lips. There had been many mornings of disappointment, many evenings of quiet resignation. The ground remained stubbornly bare, a testament to the harshness of the land and the fragility of her dreams. Weeks turned into months, the cycle of hope and disappointment repeating itself, yet Xochitl never faltered in her dedication. Then came the morning that changed everything. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of damp earth after a rare, light rain during the night. Xochitl, weary but driven by habit, approached the corn patch. Her eyes, accustomed to seeing only the dry, cracked surface, widened. A gasp escaped her lips, a sound caught between disbelief and overwhelming joy. There, pushing through the dark soil, were tiny, vibrant green shoots, small, delicate, but undeniably alive. Each one was a testament to resilience, a miniature flag of victory against the vast, indifferent landscape. They stood, proud and defiant, reaching for the morning sun. The dew clinging to their tender leaves sparkled like tiny jewels. Tears, hot and unstoppable, streamed down Xochitl's face. They were tears of exhaustion, the accumulated weight of months of backbreaking labor, fear, and loneliness. They were tears of relief, the sudden release of tension that had coiled tight in her chest for so long. And they were tears of a fragile, newfound hope, a hope that shimmered like the dew on the tiny leaves. This small victory, this first sprout, felt monumental. It was more than just corn. It was a symbol of her own burgeoning strength, a tangible manifestation of her refusal to be broken. Xochitl knelt, her knees sinking into the damp earth. She reached out a trembling hand, not daring to touch the delicate sprouts, but hovering above them as if to absorb their nascent energy. The green was so vivid, so full of life, a stark contrast to the parched browns and grays that had dominated her world. This was growth. This was life. This was the first step on a long, arduous journey of reconstruction, but it was a step taken, a seed planted, a future beginning to unfurl. The promise of harvest, though distant, felt suddenly, wonderfully real. The silence of the rancho was broken only by the quiet sound of Xochitl's sobs, a symphony of relief and gratitude. The sun climbed higher, warming the earth and with it Xochitl's spirit. The sun, a fiery orb, dipped low, casting long shadows across the nascent corn shoots. Xochitl, her brow beaded with sweat, paused, leaning on the worn handle of her hoe. The patch of land before her, though small, felt monumental, a testament to every aching muscle and every tear shed. But one section, stubborn and unyielding, remained a challenge. Its soil was packed hard, resisting her efforts, a metaphor for the last vestiges of her past that clung to her spirit. She sighed, wiping a hand across her forehead, the dust mingling with her sweat. This, she thought, was not what she had envisioned when she began this arduous journey, but it was what she had. Every day presented a new hurdle, every sunrise a renewed resolve. She knew, would not give up. A small, curious face peeked around the edge of the thorny mesquite bush that marked the boundary of her property. It was Sophia, a child with eyes like polished obsidian, who often wandered near Xochitl's rancho. Her presence, always quiet and unobtrusive, had become a familiar comfort. Sophia held a small, intricately carved wooden bird, its wings spread as if in flight. She did not speak, but her gaze, wide and innocent, seemed to absorb every detail of Xochitl's struggle. Xochitl offered a small, tired smile, and Sophia in turn offered a shy, fleeting one before retreating behind the bush. Moments later, a deeper shadow fell across the land. Emiliano, Sophia's father, emerged from behind the mesquite, a burlap sack slung over his shoulder. He was a quiet man, known for his diligent work on his own rancho, which lay just beyond the ridge. His gaze, usually serene, held a quiet sadness, a depth that hinted at untold stories. A faint scar traced a line above his left eyebrow, a silent testament to a past struggle, a burden he carried with quiet dignity. He nodded to Xochitl, a respectful acknowledgement. "Good evening, Xochitl," he said, his voice a low rumble, gentle like the wind through the tall grasses. "Sophia mentioned you were having some trouble with this soil." He gestured towards the unyielding patch. Xochitl felt a blush creep up her neck. She was not accustomed to being observed, let alone offered help. It's a bit stubborn," she admitted, her voice softer than she intended. Emiliano set down his sack, its contents rustling softly. "Perhaps I can offer some assistance," he said, his eyes meeting hers briefly before dropping to the ground. "And perhaps these will help." He reached into the sack and pulled out a handful of seeds, plump, golden kernels of corn, different from the shriveled ones she had planted. "They are from my last harvest. Good stock. They yielded well." Xochitl looked at the seeds, then at him. What was this kindness? She had been so alone for so long. "You don't have to," she began, but he was already moving, his movements economical and strong. "It is no trouble," he replied, already kneeling by the stubborn patch. He took the hoe from her, his large hands dwarfing its handle. With a steady, rhythmic motion, he began to break the earth. Each swing was precise, powerful, and the compacted soil, which had defied Xochitl's every effort, slowly began to yield. He worked in silence, the only sounds the rhythmic thud of the hoe and the soft rustle of Sophia, who had reappeared and now sat cross-legged a short distance away, watching her father with quiet adoration. Xochitl watched him, mesmerized by his strength and his unspoken generosity. There was a quiet dignity about him, a sense of deep-rooted resilience that resonated with her own burgeoning spirit. She noticed the slight tremor in his hands when he paused, and the way his gaze would occasionally drift towards the horizon, a faraway look in his eyes that spoke of burdens carried, perhaps a lost love, a dream unfulfilled. This was a man, she sensed, who understood hardship, not just observed it. His sadness, she realized, was not unlike her own, a quiet companion. After a few minutes, the patch was transformed. The earth, once hard and impenetrable, was now loose and fertile, ready to receive the seeds. Emiliano straightened up, handing the hoe back to Xochitl. "There," he said, a small, tired smile gracing his lips. "It should be easier now." He extended the handful of golden seeds to her. "For your new patch." Xochitl took the seeds, her fingers brushing against his. A spark, fleeting but undeniable, passed between them. It was not a spark of passion, not yet, but one of recognition, of shared understanding. She felt a warmth spread through her, a sensation she hadn't experienced in what felt like a lifetime. "Thank you, Emiliano," she said, her voice thick with gratitude. This means a lot." He nodded again, then turned to Sophia. "Come, mi hija," he said gently. "It is time for us to go." Sophia rose, clutching her wooden bird, and gave Xochitl another shy smile before walking beside her father. As they walked away, Emiliano glanced back, his eyes lingering on Xochitl for a moment longer than necessary, a silent question in their depths. She thought, had found something she hadn't known she was looking for. This quiet man, with his sad eyes and his generous spirit, had planted more than just seeds today. He had planted a new kind of hope, a hope that was not just about survival, but about connection, about the possibility of a shared future. And as the last rays of the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Xochitl knew that this was just the beginning. Every small act of kindness, every shared moment, was a building block in the reconstruction of her life, and perhaps of her heart. The sun beat down, but Xochitl and Emiliano worked in a rhythm that defied the heat, their movements synchronized, a quiet dance of shared purpose. He would clear the stubborn brush, his strong arms making quick work of what had once seemed an insurmountable task. Then Xochitl would follow, her hands deftly preparing the soil, turning the earth with a gentle reverence. More crops, more life was their unspoken goal. Every seed planted a tiny promise to the future. They rarely spoke at length, but the shared labor, the easy understanding in their glances, built a foundation stronger than any words. Her gaze often lingered on his profile, the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the quiet strength that emanated from him. And he in turn found himself watching her, the grace in her movements, the determination in her eyes, a quiet admiration growing with each passing day. Sophia, now a frequent visitor, would often arrive with a basket of fresh tortillas or a jug of cool water, her presence a welcome addition to their small, growing world. She had taken to Xochitl's newborn son, Mateo, with an almost maternal tenderness. Sophia would sit in the shade of the newly flourishing corn, gently rocking the baby, humming soft lullabies while Xochitl worked nearby. "He has your eyes, Xochitl," Sophia said one afternoon, her voice soft, as Mateo's tiny fingers curled around her own. Xochitl smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached her eyes. This growing bond between Sophia and Mateo, and by extension between Sophia and Xochitl, was a silent blessing, a testament to the new connections forming around them. It was a good feeling knowing Sophia was there, a quiet acceptance that warmed Xochitl's heart. There was no judgment, only a growing affection that felt like family. Emiliano, watching the two of them, felt a lightness he hadn't known in years. His daughter, Sophia, was smiling more, laughing more, and it was Xochitl's presence that had brought this change. He saw the way Xochitl cared for Mateo, the way her love flowed effortlessly, and a quiet admiration grew within him. He saw her resilience, her unwavering spirit, and knew this was what had drawn him to her. This was not the kind of fleeting attraction he had known before. This was something deeper, something rooted in respect and shared values, a connection built on the solid ground of mutual understanding and quiet support. One evening, after a particularly fruitful day of clearing and planting, the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. They had finished planting a new row of beans, their hands caked with earth, their bodies tired but satisfied. As Emiliano reached for the watering can, his hand brushed against Xochitl's. It was a fleeting touch, barely there, but a jolt, a spark, ignited between them. Her breath caught in her throat. His eyes, usually so reserved, met hers, and in that moment the unspoken became palpable. There was a warmth that spread through Xochitl, a quiet understanding that transcended the simple touch. Emiliano did not pull away immediately. Instead, his fingers lingered for a fraction of a second longer, a silent acknowledgement of the connection that had been steadily building between them. A soft, shared smile passed between them, a silent promise of what might be. The air around them seemed to hum with a newfound energy, a promise of something more. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows, but in the growing twilight, a new light had begun to shine. This was a good feeling, a feeling of hope and belonging. The air hummed with a quiet joy, a palpable sense of relief and accomplishment. The harvest, abundant and generous, had blessed their community. Every face glowed under the setting sun, reflecting the bounty of the land. Xochitl, her heart swelling with pride, moved among the gathering, a basket overflowing with plump corn and vibrant vegetables cradled in her arms. She offered them freely, her smile bright and genuine, sharing the fruits of her labor with everyone who had supported her. The curandera, a woman known for her sharp eye and even sharper tongue, nodded in approval as Xochitl handed her a basket of freshly picked tomatoes. "Good work, Xochitl," the curandera said, her voice softer than usual. "This is what true resilience looks like." Emiliano watched her, a quiet admiration shining in his eyes. He saw not just the success of the harvest, but the transformation within Xochitl herself. She was no longer the broken woman he had first encountered. This Xochitl, vibrant and strong, was a testament to her own unwavering spirit. He remembered the day her hands had brushed against his, the electric current that had sparked between them, a silent promise of something more. Sophia, his daughter, giggled as she chased Mateo, Xochitl's son, around a small bonfire, their laughter weaving into the gentle murmur of conversation. The bond between them, so pure and innocent, mirrored the growing connection between Xochitl and Emiliano. Sophia often spoke of Xochitl with such warmth, and Emiliano knew his daughter's newfound happiness was inextricably linked to Xochitl's presence in their lives. As the celebration began to wind down, and the last embers of the bonfire cast long, dancing shadows, Emiliano found Xochitl standing a little apart, gazing up at the vast, star-dusted Mexican sky. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. He approached her slowly, his footsteps soft on the earth. "What are you thinking about?" Emiliano asked, his voice a low rumble. Xochitl turned, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "Just everything," she said, a small, contented sigh escaping her lips. "This, all of this, it feels like a dream." Emiliano reached out, his hand gently cupping her cheek. The touch was tender, reverent. "It's real, Xochitl," he said, his thumb stroking her skin. The moment hung in the air, charged with emotion. The scent of wood smoke and earth mingled with the subtle fragrance of her skin. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, but she didn't. Instead, her eyes, wide and luminous, met his, and a soft gasp escaped her lips as his mouth found hers. The kiss was spontaneous, born of the moment, a culmination of shared struggles and quiet triumphs. It was soft at first, tentative, then deepened, blooming into a tender promise. It was a kiss that spoke of respect, of admiration, of a deep and profound connection that had grown from shared purpose and mutual support. It was not a kiss of desperation, but of hope, of new beginnings. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Emiliano rested his forehead against hers. "No manches, Xochitl," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You've brought so much life back to this place and to me. My world feels brighter because you're in it." Her heart hammered against her ribs, a joyous drumbeat. This was it. This was the pivotal moment, the culmination of all her efforts, all her pain, all her resilience. She had not only survived, but thrived, and in doing so, had found something she never dared to dream of. The emotional connection between them was undeniable, a palpable force that enveloped them both. The celebration of the harvest had been a celebration of her progress, her unwavering spirit, and now this kiss sealed it all. The stars above seemed to shimmer brighter, as if in approval. There was a quiet strength in her, a newfound confidence that radiated from her very being. Every challenge she had faced, every tear she had shed, had led her to this moment, under the vast, silent sky, in the arms of a man who saw her not for her past, but for the incredible woman she had become. This was her victory, her triumph, and it was only the beginning. The sun, a familiar friend, now warmed Xochitl's back as she meticulously arranged her produce at the local market. This was not just survival. This was a business, born from the very soil she had nurtured. Every vibrant tomato, every crisp lettuce leaf, spoke of her dedication. People, at first curious, then impressed, began to seek her out. "Your greens are the freshest, Xochitl," a woman said, her voice filled with admiration. Xochitl, remembering the lean times, smiled. She had transformed the initial struggle into a thriving enterprise, one basket of vegetables at a time. The scent of fresh produce mingled with the earthy aroma of the market, a symphony of abundance. Her reputation grew, not just for the quality of her harvests, but for her ingenuity. Xochitl, always mindful of tradition, found new ways to innovate. She began drying herbs, their fragrant bundles hanging like edible tapestries above her stall. Then came the artisanal tortillas, made from corn she herself had grown and ground, each one a testament to her heritage and skill. "How do you make them so soft, Xochitl?" asked a young mother, holding a warm tortilla to her baby's nose. Xochitl shared her secrets, her hands moving deftly as she demonstrated the technique. This was what she was good at, what she was meant to do. As her presence at the market solidified, so too did her role as a mentor. Other women, their faces etched with their own struggles, began to approach her. She, Xochitl, who had once felt so broken, was now a beacon of resilience. Sophia, now a frequent helper at the stall, watched Xochitl with wide, adoring eyes, absorbing every lesson. "Xochitl, my harvest was not good this year," Doña Remedios confided one market day, her voice heavy with despair. Xochitl listened, her empathy a warm blanket. She remembered her own despair, the feeling of being abandoned with minimal resources. But she had overcome that. This was what she could offer. She couldn't give them money, but she could give them knowledge, hope, and a path to independence. Xochitl began to organize small gatherings after market hours, under the shade of the old mesquite tree. She taught them her methods from seed to sale. She showed them how to prepare the soil, how to tend the plants, how to preserve the bounty. She helped them understand the market, what people wanted, and how to price their goods fairly. This was more than just farming. It was about reclaiming their lives. "You can do this," Xochitl said, her voice firm but kind, as she guided a hesitant Mateo in planting a tiny seed. The women, inspired by her unwavering spirit, formed a small cooperative. They pooled their resources, shared their knowledge, and supported each other. Xochitl, with her quiet strength, became their unofficial leader. She taught them not just about agriculture, but about self-worth, about the power of community. Every successful sale, every new customer, was a victory for all of them. The rancho, once a place of her personal despair, now hummed with the vibrant energy of shared purpose. Emiliano watched her, his admiration deepening with every passing day. He saw not just the successful businesswoman, but the compassionate leader, the woman who had transformed her own hardship into a catalyst for change in the lives of others. This was her triumph, a testament to what she was capable of. This was what good could come from the deepest pain. Her impact had expanded from an individual struggle to a collective upliftment. She, Xochitl, was truly a comeback queen. The afternoon sun, warm and generous, bathed the central plaza of the village in a golden glow. A small gathering had formed, their faces alight with anticipation. The air hummed with a quiet excitement, a palpable sense of shared pride. Xochitl, dressed simply but elegantly, stood among them, a gentle smile playing on her lips. She felt a profound sense of belonging, a feeling that had been alien to her for so long. Every face she saw was familiar, every gaze held respect and affection. The rancho, once a stark reminder of abandonment, had blossomed under her care. It was no longer just a plot of land, but a vibrant hub, a place where laughter mingled with the rustle of leaves and the cheerful chatter of children. Sophia and Mateo often chased each other through its verdant fields, their youthful energy a testament to the life Xochitl had cultivated. Emiliano, his presence a comforting anchor, stood by her side, his hand subtly brushing hers, a silent promise of enduring support. Their connection, once a fragile spark, had grown into a steady, comforting flame, illuminating their shared path. Doña Remedios, her eyes twinkling with warmth, stepped forward, holding a simple wooden plaque. Her voice, though aged, carried across the plaza with a clear resonance. "Friends, neighbors, family," Doña Remedios began, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. "We gather today to honor one among us who has shown us the true meaning of resilience, of hard work, and of community." A ripple of murmurs, approving and appreciative, spread through the gathering. "Xochitl," Doña Remedios continued, turning her gaze to Xochitl, "when you came to us, you carried a heavy burden, but you did not let it break you. Instead, you transformed your pain into purpose, your despair into determination." Xochitl felt a lump form in her throat, her eyes misting slightly. She thought of the desolate rancho, of the nights spent in quiet desperation, of the long, arduous journey from abandonment to empowerment. She remembered the early days, the sheer physical labor, the uncertainty that gnawed at her. But then, she thought of Emiliano's unwavering support, of Sophia's innocent affection for Mateo, of the women in the cooperative, their faces beaming with newfound confidence. This was not just her triumph, it was their triumph, a testament to the strength of a community that embraced its own. Doña Remedios extended the plaque to Xochitl. This, Doña Remedios said, her voice imbued with deep respect, is a small token of our gratitude. It is a symbol of the seeds you have sown, not just in the earth but in our hearts. It recognizes the rancho, which you have transformed into a place of abundance for all, a place where every person finds hope and help. It acknowledges the cooperative you built, empowering so many of our women to find their own strength, their own voice. You have shown us that even from scarcity, abundance can be created. You have shown us that love, based on respect, can heal wounds and build futures. Xochitl took the plaque, her fingers tracing the simple inscription, to Xochitl, for your unwavering spirit and your boundless generosity, from your grateful community. The words, though few, spoke volumes. She held it close, a physical representation of her journey, of the love and growth she had found. Just then, a young woman from the local newspaper, her camera flashing, approached. Xochitl turned, a slight surprise on her face, but her smile remained. "Excuse me, Xochitl," the reporter began, her voice bright with enthusiasm. "I am from the regional newspaper, and we've been hearing so much about the incredible changes happening here. Your story is an inspiration. We'd love to feature you on the front page. Your journey from hardship to hope, your transformation of the rancho, your work with the women's cooperative, it's a beacon for others facing similar struggles. We want to share how you created abundance from scarcity, how you built a thriving business, and how you became a symbol of women supporting women." Xochitl nodded, a genuine smile spreading across her face. "I would be honored," Xochitl said, her voice steady and clear. She understood the power of her story, not just for herself, but for every woman who had ever felt abandoned, every individual who had faced adversity. Her physical space, the rancho, now vibrant and bustling, truly reflected her internal transformation. The once desolate land was now a testament to her unwavering spirit, a beacon of hope for others. The community's embrace was complete, a warm, comforting blanket of belonging that settled deep within her soul. This was not just a comeback, it was a flourishing, a testament to the power of love, growth, and community.